divorce, they say that this time of year is, sensitive for a lot of people. So my question to you would be, how how would you advise that parents who have children, we'll start with them, how would you advise or what would you recommend that they do if one child or if a child expresses a preference to spend the holiday with one parent versus the other
Ooh, that's a good question. Right. So, first, kids like structure, right? Just as much as we do, but they thrive in a space of structure. And so it's important to be consistent as well. So the holiday seasons, as they come up, have a plan, and if the plan was to spend the holidays with one parent and the child has voiced, this is what I desire. I would really appreciate the parents could be amicable and communicate and be able to be flexible in the season. A lot of times what I've experienced is parents is not flexible. They're like, "Oh no, I'm not switching my holiday. This is my day, this is my time," and they
parent?
are really rigid about that. And that's, I mean, at the end of the day, we got to consider the kid. What do they need, and how does this benefit them, and how does it affect them emotionally? But a lot of times people think, oh, kids are so fluid and they'll be okay, it doesn't matter. But no, that stuff is trauma. It's traumatizing when you
Hmm.
are forced to stay a place that you did not desire to stay. And while it's a trauma with a little t, it's still trauma. And will they remember it forever? Absolutely, they will. That's what trauma does to you. And so I recommend that those things are taken into consideration. And whenever we can make moves or whatever it is for a child that is going to affect their emotional and mental health, we need to do that. It may be difficult, it may require sacrifice. And that's what parenting is.
We do have a question in the comments. Looks like World Series Champ is asking, how do we manage awkward silence at the child's school events when you see your spouse? So I'm assuming this is if the spouses are in the middle of a divorce. And so,
Awkward silence.
yeah,
Um,
awkward silence. We
yeah.
just had one ourselves. Like, okay.
Yeah. Hopefully, this is something that you can also talk to your therapist about, but I recommend therapy during the divorce process as well, for both people. I mean, if it's, sometimes I have clients who just get the divorce right away. They come in and get the divorce and it's easy. There's not a lot of separation, but even then, after the day of, it's still an emotional process because you have to grieve it. It's a loss, even if it's a loss that you desire to have. Even if you wanted to get rid of that person, I don't want to be in this relationship. You want to end that relationship. It's still a loss, and you still have to grieve it, and you're still going to feel something towards it. So I recommend therapy first. Second thing is with awkward silence. Um, who cares, right? Like if you're awkward, you're not there for them. You're there for the kid. And so we're going to be centered around the kid. Is the kid happy? Yep. And so we're going to be happy. And we're going to put on the face for the kid, because our job is to protect the child. Will the other person is, they don't, you think they care if you are there? They don't. Do they think you think they caring about is being awkward in silence? They don't. So we cannot be caring about something that somebody else doesn't care about as well. We have to consider ourselves first. And it's important to prioritize ourselves, especially in the divorce process.
So, with that being said, you mentioned about the kids possibly not, noticing the awkward silence and whatnot. But how would you advise that someone effectively communicate with their ex partner about the holiday plans to make sure to ensure that it's an enjoyable experience for the child?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So here's the thing. The kids do notice. People say the kids don't know we doing this. They don't know we doing that. They do. They know arguing. They know when you having sex. They know all of that stuff. They are very aware because they come and tell me. They come and tell me. So I know that they know. And
Hmm.
let's being realistic. Did you remember when your whatever was going on in the house? You felt stuff. You can, and you have this type of innate feeling that you are connected with your parents. So anyhow, Effective communication. Communication requires two people. So if you can communicate effectively the best way you know how, and take out your emotion, right? Because if you're going to communicate, you want to be in an executive state of mind. That is your thinking, right? You don't want to be in an emotional state of mind, because if they trigger you, then you may go in a different direction that is helpful. So you want to be able to make sure that you are in a clear space. And if you are getting emotional, because it can be emotional, it's regarding your children, you need to take a moment to step back. And if sometimes you don't always have that moment, you still need to take some deep breaths, because you don't want to say anything that's going to escalate a situation and make it worse, right? So again, it requires two people. You would hope the other person would communicate. If you can't get the other person to communicate, you do have rights. And so, but hopefully you can do all that you can in the methods of communication that is placed in your divorce decree, or your attorney has told you to communicate that way, or if y'all are cool, having a phone call. But whatever the case may be, making sure that you have a safe place to communicate, and without all of the emotions.
Out all the emotions. I often well, I see a lot of emotions in this office because it's just the nature of the business. But I do see that around this time of year, people start getting really antsy, nervous, anxious about, what their holiday is going to look like, feel like, be like. And my concern is always, whether or not you either have a great holiday season and you realize that life is short. Every Christmas or every Thanksgiving or whatever isn't promised. And then on the flip side, you have the divorce season, as we call it, wherein after the holidays people rush in because they realize my Christmas was horrible, I got to change something, I've got to make changes, I've got to get out of this marriage. And then January they're ready to file. So is there any sort of like I'm not going to use the word revelation, but do you do you encourage people to go by how they feel about the holidays in making determinations about what to do with their marriage or about their children or whatever? I think I know what I'm asking, but I may not be super clear. Are you able to give advice about people or two people who are using the holidays to measure whether or not they should stay or leave or ask for custody or not, or how would you
Good question.
awkward silence, awkward silence. Right, yeah, like how would you, what advice would you give them?
Okay. First. A lot of times people want to start a new year, right? They want to say, "Oh, I want to start something new," and so a lot of some people want to start file for divorce at the beginning of the year. I have a lot of clients like, "Okay, I'm giving them till the 30th, to get it right, December." A lot of people always say, "I'm giving them to the end of the year. I'm giving them to the end of the year." In general, and so then we talk about the holidays too, and so in general, when we're talking about relationship, we want to spend holidays with people that we love and that we're connected with and we have a relationship with. And so you have to think about a whole lot of different combinations. And so when you're talking about the holidays, is this person around the holidays making me feel happy? Do they make me feel included? Do they make me feel special? Were they available to me during the holidays? If somebody disappears during the holidays, or they're fickle during the holidays, is questionable. But I do not say, because of the holidays, let that be a determinant on how you decide to move forward in divorce. Right? It can't be just the only thing that's happening in the holidays that make you have a red flag. You've already had those already, and so um, you have, and so most of the time, I think that the holidays. I think that they just um, make it more. The light is shine more on it, just the same way with the pandemic.
Oh
So,
yeah, I
yeah.
remember a lot of that was, yeah, a lot. and honestly, that was a time period where you would have thought that people would have